to Discovery, and welcome to another episode of Discovery. We have plenty of bands that I need to share with you guys and plenty of reviews, so let's get on with it. There have been some really good metal this month and some really good metal last month, and I did actually miss a few bands last month that I need to share with you guys on Discovery this month. So first of all, let's check out a band called Dwarrowdelf and the album Evenstar. So this album is a concept album following the J.R. Tolkien story of Lord of the Rings, and we're talking about Aragorn here, who is basically looking for love as he journeys throughout the land. And overall, this album is a black metal album, incorporating elements of folk metal, but this album is something very special. It really is. Now, I do love the elements of the production on this album, not to mention the amazing atmosphere you're getting throughout this record. His vocals at times are quite clean and at times they are quite blackened. I do love his high shrieks throughout this album, conveying quite a lot of emotion towards the listener. This album has 7 songs on it, stretching about 45 minutes. I absolutely love the song Estelle. Estelle was a great way to just introduce the character to you, along with Adomiel, which is a lot more calmer, but you get some really awesome songs like The Three Hunters. The Three Hunters is absolutely a fantastic song with an incredible solo on it, along with Return. Now, I do love Return. I love how evil this album sounds at times, but yet sounds angelic. I just love how they mix the folky elements along with the black metal elements as well. At times, the melody is contagious. There are awesome guitar riffs on this album. Really love the drumming as well. It's a pretty tight and cohesive album by Dwarrowdelf. Evenstar was a pretty solid album. But of course, there are some negatives, like 45 minutes. It is a little bit too short in my opinion. Maybe add a few more songs. But this album does flow quite well. It tells you the story of Aragorn, and you know what? It's a pretty good album. The production, on the other hand, is pretty good as well, and I do love the tone of the guitars, not to mention the drumming. Really eventful album that you want to listen to it over and over again to understand the concept. For Dwarrowdelf Evenstar, I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. So take a listen to some of Dwarrowdelf. Okay, so next up we're talking about the black metal band Uada and the album Djinn. This album is absolutely fantastic. I absolutely adore this album. I love it. I've played this countless times now, and I just love how atmospheric this album is. People shit on Uada as well, saying, ooh, they're a clone of Magua. That's bullshit, man. It seems like Uada have definitely siphoned in their own sound. Djinn doesn't sound anything like Magua. Maybe the lyrics are a bit similar to Maguire's lyrics, like nihilism and everything like that, but that's it. The lyrics may be similar, but that's it. Djinn, the Great Mirage, has some really awesome tremolo moments on this album, not to mention incorporating elements of post-metal as well. And I just love how they intertwine these genres. The vocals are intense as anything. They are really intense. I just love the death growls on this album, quite blackened, along with the blackened shrieks, and overall, this is a really cool album. Although this is not, in my opinion, the best Uada album, I feel that Cult of Dying Sun is a lot better than Djinn, just because of the overall structure. But I just really enjoy this album. I love how heavy this album is at times, but yet so blissful. And overall, No Place Here in the Absence of Matter, fantastic songs. Forestless is another great song, and Between Two Worlds, it ends off with a guitar solo that just absolutely transports you into another fucking world. The atmosphere is absolutely amazing. I love the production. The production sounds gritty and raw. It just creates that atmosphere, which is what you want in a melodic black metal album like Uada's Djinn. So overall, Djinn by Uada, I will give this probably a solid 8.5 out of 10. You haven't listened to Uada's Djinn? Listen to it now. Okay, so next up we're talking about Marche Funèbre and the album Einderlicht. This album is absolutely fantastic. This was my second album of the month last month, and I'll tell you what, I absolutely stand by my decision. I really do. This was going to be my #1 album, although it just Didn't make it to my #1 album because The Ocean released a fantastic album. You know what? It kicks off with some really heavy moments, and this is a doom album, corporate elements of funeral doom, along with epic doom as well. Just imagine at times Swallow the Sun, Hooded Menace as well, but also along with Emperor, because they incorporate black metal vocals as well, especially throughout the song When All Is Sad. This album is very transitional, it really is, and some of these songs are absolutely fantastic. Scarred is the weakest song of the fucking album. It is the weakest song of the album, but from then, The Eye Is the End, When All Is Said, The Maelstrom, Mood are just all fantastic songs, but my favorite song of the album is Deformed. It's Deformed. Deformed is so damn good. I just love the melodies. I love how it's a sort of a building crescendo song that builds up to such an epic anthemic conclusion. It's so damn good, it really is, and leads on to Einderlicht, the title track. I just love the passages on this album. It's probably a masterpiece by Marche Funèbre, although there are some elements that it's not a masterpiece because of the vocals. The clean vocals are a little bit shit. They are. But the growls though, the growls are absolutely incredible. The cleans are shit, the growls are amazing. It's an 8.5 out of 10. If you haven't checked out Marche Funèbre, check him out now. Okay, so next up is the funeral doom metal band Celestial Seasons and the album The Secret Teachings. This album took me by surprise, it really did. Shout out to Joshua Coe as well, that messaged me and said, hey, check out this fucking album, cunt. And we did. I checked it out and I fucking loved it. I really did. And overall, this is a funeral doom album, but they incorporate so many elements. Like, this is also a symphonic album because they incorporate violins, and I just absolutely love it. The growls are incredible, the cleans are fantastic, some amazing moments on this album. Like, we're talking about Veil of Silence, which has an unbelievable guitar solo. I love the solos on this album, and it's just an up and down roller coaster of a ride, it really is. It's not heavy, it's funeral doom, and it's funeral doom done right. It reminds of bands such as Convocation, at times such as Temple of Void as well. At times they incorporate elements of death, but it's mainly just funeral doom. There are some awesome transitions on this album, and overall I just really enjoyed it. Production is good. The production's very good. It doesn't sound mechanical, it sounds organic. The guitars, on the other hand, really remind me of bands such as My Dying Bride, especially the guitar tone. It's got the element of My Dying Bride sound, but damn, the vocals are fantastic, the cleans are good. Just a really solid album by this band, and overall I really enjoyed it. Like, I absolutely adored A Veil of Silence, loved Red Water, and even The Secret Teachings of All Ages. The first song was absolute fire. If you haven't checked out Celestial Seasons, check out The Secret Teachings. And for Celestial Seasons, The Secret Teachings, an 8.5 out of 10. Okay, so if you want some dark metal in your life, or even gothic metal, incorporate elements of black metal along with death metal, sounding very similar to Cradle of Filth, but also sounding very similar to Rammstein, go check out the band Nachtblut and the album Vanitas. Yeah, it's not a Nal Nafrak Vanitas, but I tell you what, this album's pretty solid, it really is. Now, I really enjoyed this album. I think it's fantastic. This is a gothic metal album, but some people call it dark metal. And the reason why they call it dark metal is because it's got everything. It's extreme metal at times, but it's also gothic metal, symphonic metal as well. And I just really love the overall genre interchanges on this album. So absolutely fantastic songs, catchy songs like Vanitas, Leah Kinder, which is a bit of a softer song. There are some ballads on this album as well. And he incorporates some really incredible vocal performance, high black metal shrieks, sounding very similar at times like the Cradle of Filth lead singer Danny Filth. But damn, this is a very solid album released by Nachtblut. Never heard of him, but I thoroughly enjoy it. If you want fun gothic metal, go check out this band because they are a pretty solid band in my opinion. Production, on the other hand, is quite crisp. I do love the overlaying guitar tones. Love how epic and anthemic this album feels at times. Catchy fucking songs as well, very catchy. Die Toten vergessen nicht, great song to end off the album. And overall, it's a pretty tight and cohesive album by Nachtblut. But for Vanitas, I will give this a 8 out of 10. Okay, so you've all waited for the Enslaved album review, and here we go. So next is Enslaved and the album Utgard. Yes, some of this album is very good, but some of this album is just plain boring. Now, I've heard this album a few times, and I really enjoy how solid the first half of this album is. Fires in the Dark is a great song to kick off the album. Jetty Greater is one of my favorite songs by Enslaved. I love the proggy element. Sequence is fantastic as well. Go Homebound, really love the drummer's vocals on this particular song. It's quite melodic. And things start to turn weird, like Utgard and Origin. I do love how melodic that song is. But then you've got some songs like Flight, Thought, and Memory, which has really nice solo, but I just feel this album's starting to decline in quality. Storms of Utgard as well, there is a nice solo at the end of that song, but overall it's sort of the same repetitive factor. We incorporate elements of prog rock on this album, at times sounding a bit like Pink Floyd, you could say, or even Rush, and I do love the influences on this album. But then you got Distant Seasons. Distant Seasons is a song I don't like. I really don't like. It sounds quite, dare I say, a little bit cheesy. Sounds a bit cheesy, this song, especially the harmonization. It's just a really uplifting song, and I just feel it doesn't belong on this album. And Distant Seasons can get in the fucking bin. I don't like that song. Some of these songs are solid, especially the first half of the album. But the second half of the album, yeah. Second half of the album is a little bit of a letdown. The production, on the other hand, is pretty good. I do love the production, love the tone of the guitars, but his vocals are absolutely fantastic as well. His cleans are good, his shrieks are great as well. I love the black and metal influences on this album. They do sound like Enslaved as always, but it's nowhere near as good as Mardrum or fucking Frost or even Bloodhound. Nowhere near as good as those albums. This is the weakest album in my opinion, their weakest album. I gotta say this is their weakest album because I have never fell asleep during an Enslaved album, to be honest. This album, in my opinion, does get a little bit boring. The same sort of moments. It's predictable, this album. This album does get a little bit predictable, and especially there's a few synth elements on this album and quite atmospheric at times. But for Utgard and Slave, it gets a 6 out of 10. If you haven't heard this, take a listen now. Don't get me wrong, it's a pretty solid album, but I was a little bit disappointed with this album, so it gets a 6 out of 10. Overall, this has been a really good discovery. Some really good albums. Later this week, I will review Corey Taylor's new album, CMFT. Yeah, so that'll be a fun review. I'm giving you that Cannibal Corpse album ranking as well, along with that Testament album ranking. So stay tuned on this channel. Comment below if you agree or disagree with my opinions. You agree with this Enslaved record. Keep discussion going in the comment section below. And you know what, cunts, don't subscribe. I don't understand why you subscribe to me. I'm cringy as fuck. And I will see you in the next one.